This week in the enterprise security news, a hack brought unwanted attention to SolarWinds. Datadog and Snyk unveil GitHub integration to automate software development workflows. Tomo Bravo invests in machine identity management security startup Venafi. FireEye closes $400 million in a Blackstone investment. And DigiCert enables manufacturers to embed certificates on chips prior to manufacturing. Then Martyn Crew from Gigamon joins us to discuss visibility is critical in uncertain times. We wrap up the show with a pre-recorded interview with Emily Huynh and Mandy McKenzie from Mimecast discussing Mimecast awareness training philosophy. Stay tuned for all that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Detecting and responding to threats in the cloud is harder than doing it on-prem. Even when you do have the visibility you need, legacy security workflows weren't designed for the speed and complexity of cloud environments. Cloud-native security solutions from ExtraHop are purpose-built to spot threats across the hybrid attack surface, provide detailed investigation steps, and help you automate response. Request your 30-day free trial at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. CyberArray for Teams was built to help organizations stay ahead of today's evolving threat landscape and to meet today's most difficult security challenges. Fortune 500 companies like Amgen, Booz Allen Hamilton, Plexus, CVP, Fannie Mae, and Vizio, small businesses worldwide, and several branches of the U.S. military use CyberArray for Teams to close the skill gaps that put their organizations at risk and to equip their workforce with the skills to defeat their security adversaries. CyberArray for Teams. Problem solved. Visit cyberarray.it/solved to solve your training problems. Can we continue to function without facts? Cybercriminals exploit the absence of facts, harming organizations through the easiest point of entry, email. No company should claim they can stop all phishing attacks. It's about having all the facts in seconds and reducing the time it takes to respond. It's minutes versus hours in the difference between a security incident and a breach. Greathorn. See through the dark. To learn more, go to securityweekly.com/Greathorn. Face it, your data is everywhere. No matter where your data lives or what tools you use, Imperva Data Security unifies compliance, security, and privacy needs for any data store while saving you time and money. Imperva finds threats before they become a compliance or security incident, and built-in automation empowers you to remediate quickly. Give your business confidence about what is happening with your data, where it's stored, and who's accessing it. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Imperva. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly, episode number 211 for December 16th, 2020. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, joined remotely by Mr. Matt Alderman. Matt, welcome.
It's the last show of the year.
Last ESW of the year. We still have one more Paul Security Weekly tomorrow night, though a lot of weather tomorrow could be interesting. It'll be clear by tomorrow night. Mr. Adrian Sanabria is here with us. Adrian, welcome.
Hey, I'm not shedding any tears for 2020.
Right? Looking forward to 2021. If you have a specific guest or topic that you'd like us to cover on one of the shows, you can submit your suggestions for guest by visiting securityweekly.com/guest. Complete that form, and we review those suggestions on a regular basis. And now, there was actually some security news, which I was glad for. Because I like covering news. I don't like the whole reason we have the segment is so we can cover news. So let's dig into it. Let's do funding first. Funding and acquisitions.
Yeah, some interesting funding announcements. We're going to talk about the SolarWinds component, which impacted FireEye. But what was interesting, FireEye just raised $400 million even after that breach was announced. And this is an interesting raise because FireEye is a public company. And they raised $400 million. And there's some big names behind this. Blackstone, it's Clear Sky, Jay Leak, and team, Art Coviello's joining the board. I mean, this is a pretty big announcement for a already public company to raise a round like this. So I thought it was a very interesting announcement. And the timing was interesting as well because, a week ago we were talking about the breach. Now we're talking about funding to a public company.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, these things can take, weeks, months, years to get together. So likely they already had too much momentum behind it to not do it. So
right,
that's my guess.
Agreed.
I mean, would they not do it because of the breach, or
could have? I mean, so remember earlier this year we were covering it was a Forescout and the acquisition, and then they had a market drop and they had to renegotiate the terms of the deal to eventually get the deal done. So sometimes a breach like that could impact the funding round or impact the valuation on the funding round. So there are a few things that could happen because of that. But to Adrian's point, this was probably far enough down the path. It was probably pretty much already done. They just hadn't announced it. And so this thing wasn't going to stop.
go ahead, Adrian. Sorry, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if there's anything we've learned, it's that breaches in public companies, they shake them off. If anything, they have a temporary impact, and their stock prices bounce back to normal. I keep a list of companies that have actually been destroyed by breaches, and I think the largest one on that list had maybe 300 employees. So really, breaches only spell death for small companies from what we've seen.
Yeah, true. We know the stock declined like 13% last week. I haven't checked it this week to see where it is, but I doubt it will take very long for the stock to recover, especially with another cash infusion like this. I think they're in good shape. There's a couple other interesting ones in the news. Thoma Bravo invests in Venafi. It's interesting how they are positioning Venafi, Paul. I mean, we've spoken with Venafi in the past. I mean, they're a certificate company, but they call it Machine Identity Management Security.
Yeah, I mean, you could call it that.
Yeah,
it sounds better than certificate management. It sounds sexier.
Definitely sexier.
I like No Name Security. That's a great name for a company. I love it. It sparks conversation.
I was wondering if we're supposed to pronounce it Noname,
right? Or I was like, are they in stealth and they don't want to say the name of the company, so it's No Name Security to start?
Right. Well, it was stealth. I mean, they just came out of stealth with $25 million in funding.
Right.
They're U.S. and Israeli based. There's obviously some of the 8200 unit involved in this acquisition, so I highly doubt it's pronounced Noname. It is No Name. Well, why come up with a cute and clever name? Just call it No Name Security.
I love it.
Good.
I love it. It embodies the hacker spirit.
The name alone is going to be that's classic marketing hacking because the name alone is going to generate conversation, and you're going to remember it because it's such a memorable name. And just thank God it's not something like Darkfire or like some compound word made up of something. It
can't have red in it because I'll screw it up because I've already done that.
Yeah.
It can't have risk in it because I'll be confused.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it shouldn't be like Microsoft, and it shouldn't be changing its name every 3 months.
Yeah,
that is true. Cyber, whatever.
But apparently they secure managed and unmanaged APIs.
Yes. I mean, this is an interesting play, though. I mean, we've seen this, and we're going to cover some stories on this also in the news today around application security, APIs, proliferation of APIs. Crunch 42 has some product announcements in here around API security. So this is a hot and upcoming market where we see the need to secure APIs. So here's another company in the space.
Outpost 24. I've heard of these guys before.
Yeah, they're number 4 in the vulnerability management space behind Qualys, Tenable, and Rapid7. Primarily,
are they number 4? Yeah, they're in Europe because they've gained some huge traction in Europe. Yeah, now it's all coming back to me. Yeah, we covered these when we worked at Tenable, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. They're more known out of Europe, and that's where most of their presence has been. I know they've tried to tap into the U.S. market in the past. I don't know how successful they've been. I mean, it's tough when you've got 3 large public companies sitting in the vulnerability management space. It gets a little tough to come into the U.S. and make a dent there.
And tough to say who the category king is there because all 3 of those big public companies in vulnerability management do a lot more than vulnerability management. Tenable maybe being the exception. They seem to be still very much focused on vulnerability management.
The most pure play.
Yeah, the most pure play. Yeah. which interesting could open up opportunities for. Well, now there's lots of smaller vendors, but Outpost 24 being as large as they are could make a play if they decide to come into the U.S. and do some marketing and awareness.
I didn't realize they had acquired Pony Express. That's a blast from the past.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't.
Old sponsor.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did some other stuff in the cloud side as well. So they've tried to play a little broader into some of the newer technologies as well and expand into those areas. But I forgot about the Pony Express acquisition. And then this last one, VMware. Paul, you did some work with the VMware guys in the past. They closed a $25 million Series B. It's funny how they describe them in this article. I mean, they're a malware sandbox play pretty much, right?
Yes, they are. Analysis platform, largely for malware. Now you're testing my memory. Yeah, VM analyzer detector. Yeah, malware analysis.
Yeah, malware analysis and some sandboxing.
It's coming back to me. Yeah, because they use really advanced hypervisor technologies, so the malware doesn't realize it's actually running inside of a sandbox, and they do that really, really well. And I want to say the folks that work on the team did an open source sandbox, which is where they got their founded in 2013. Founders complete PhD program, pioneering work in sandboxing. That's why I like them, because they actually did the work in the research and then created a company. So, and is this a Gula investment, or he does some other VM company?
No, he did Nano VM.
Nano VM. I knew there was a VM in one of the companies he invested in. Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's a pretty good approach. We've seen Invincia actually pivoted from a Bromium competitor to like a next-gen AV competitor. But they also acquired an open source sandboxing, similar sandboxing application called Sandboxy.
Yes.
That became part of Invincia, and then Invincia got acquired by Sophos. So all that IP is over at Sophos now.
And the wheels keep spinning.
Yep. Big fish eat smaller fish, and on it goes.
Oh, I have not followed the SolarWinds breach as much as I should have. I know I flagged a bunch of articles, and I'm seeing it unfold, but I'm not sure of all the details yet.
I bet you're going to cover it in depth tomorrow night with the guys.
But yeah, that's when I plan to.
Yeah, but it looks like and we covered this partially last week, right? Is that the FireEye breach was related to, I think we did, SolarWinds. There was a compromise of SolarWinds, and it didn't just impact FireEye. It supposedly hit DHS and a few other federal agencies as well. So this is getting a little interesting. SolarWinds is all over in the news now, as it looks like the source for the FireEye breach and potentially some other agencies. Yeah.
Yeah, supply chain attacks are the scariest attacks, because really, as a bad guy, if you're thinking about how you can get access to as many things as possible, hit those libraries. We've seen attacks against stuff like NPM, different libraries that tons of software depends on, and there was a DLL within that SolarWinds product that was backdoored and making outbound HTTP requests, and scary stuff, because that's and the thing is, most companies, if you've got EDR, you've got the tools to detect this, but you've got to be really good. You got to have things really buttoned down to notice that, hey, this one DLL within this one package from this one vendor shouldn't be talking to any other servers but these.
Yeah. And that was Sandworm. It was in one of those stories. Was it it was like Ukrainian software used in the Ukraine to do accounting, right? And
that was not Petya.
It was not Petya. Okay. That was the other one on my tip of my brain. And they got inside basically the software delivery mechanism, the update mechanism in that software to target for NotPetya.
So here's the security industry screaming, patch, patch, patch. And, now what do you do when the patch comes with a backdoor?
Yep.
Or malware?
Yep. I'm not sure that's how it unfolded in SolarWinds. However, if I put my evil hat on, that's how I might attack the SolarWinds customers, is to put a backdoor, in there. Microsoft, I will give them credit, has done an amazing job of protecting their infrastructure so that doesn't happen, right? Because obviously that would be a huge attack vector. But smart attackers are now going after, let's go after SolarWinds. Maybe they haven't put as much engineering effort into their security around their updates, and they have a lot of the same large enterprise customers that we might want to have access to.
Yeah, there's so many targets. I mean, there's so much software out there, and there's so many companies that, just aren't very mature, but they ship software to hundreds of thousands or millions of systems on a regular basis. And even the AP article, Associated Press article on this, the title is "Hack Brings Unwanted Attention to Obscure but Vital IT Firm." So yeah, in the mainstream, most people haven't even heard of SolarWinds.
Right, SolarWinds is obscure to people outside of our field. Mm-hmm. Most of us have used it, but most of us are probably on the panel and listening have worked in an organization that has had some SolarWinds product, right, in your career. Yep. If you've worked in this field for any amount of time, many of us probably have hands-on experience with SolarWinds. Certainly their free tools back in the day, I used a lot of they had some free tools. They were one of the great sources of like discovery tools and things like that. They had some good free tools.
Definitely.
What else do we have in the news? NetScout announced the extension of its smart perimeter protection to AWS. Yet more security companies bolting on top of AWS.
Yeah, and the question is, I get this from if you're a NetScout customer in your hybrid environment and you need to do this because now you got stuff running in AWS and on-prem and you want to put your DDoS protection in place and get all this stuff set. I get it. But you're going to see companies do this, but then you've got AWS just has a ton of capabilities themselves too.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see something like this. It looks like you've got to basically run something in EC2 that functions as a load balancer and as essentially a choke point for this traffic that it's going to inspect. So a very traditional type of architecture in AWS. I'm curious to know how many companies are actually doing this or doing this kind of bolt on. It doesn't look like it really takes advantage of a lot of AWS capabilities, because I think full packet capture is a possibility with AWS now. They keep opening up that control plane for EC2 more and more. I knew at one point you could get NetFlow, and then I think they moved to actual packet capture.
Packet mirroring. It's packet mirroring, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then there's things where you can actually interact with hosts you're running in EC2 without putting an agent on the hosts. So there's some hooks into what's going on those systems from the outside. So I'd be curious if they're taking advantage of any of that, or if it's just an appliance you dump in EC2.
Well, that's how everybody dips their toe into the cloud water, right? They take their physical appliance, they convert it into a virtual appliance, and you throw it on an EC2 instance. That's, hey, I got cloud capabilities, which is look like what they did. The really advanced cloud security players are definitely leveraging, I think, a lot more of the AWS capabilities across the board. I mean, when you look at like the packet mirroring stuff and what ExtraHop's done, for example, to be able to pull those packets. They're pulling those packets and putting them in their own SaaS platform to analyze them. They're not forcing you to spin up a bunch of EC2 instances to do that analysis.
Yeah, I wonder if customers are actually asking for stuff like this, or if it's more like somebody in the board's like, why are we not in the cloud? We need to get into cloud.
The latter.
That's my board member voice.
You've got a few articles here, Paul, around the AppSec market, right? So it looks like
Veracode published a report that I thought was really interesting. The common security flaws in apps. I think this is not the first time they've produced such report. They've got good visibility into many customers. Information leakage, CRLF injection, and cryptographic issues top the spectrum. And there's a whole list with the percentages and things like that. So I think injection flaws in particular, if you were to lump those into one bucket, would be high up there, as well as the cross-site family, right? Cross-site scripting and the like, pretty common.
And then Contrast had kind of their own spin on a report, more around flaws in the results and kind of the issues associated with AppSec and having problems with your application environment. Here they talk about APIs. We talked about a new startup in the API space. 42 Crunch has some new capabilities on the API front, and Contrast is talking about, obviously we have a lot more APIs communicate with applications, and that's one of the potential attack vectors. So, there's a lot of stories focused around application security, and we cover this on ASW, but we also see a lot of news that comes over to this show. There is a lot of activity happening in the application security space these days.
This one caught my eye from 42 Crunch because I'm an IntelliJ user, primarily PyCharm, but I think they make some of the best and most popular, of course, IDEs on the market today. IntelliJ is their Java platform. JetBrains is the company. JetBrains also makes PyCharm and PHP Storm. I tell you, I've tested the IDEs. They're my favorite. You may be VS Code or some other IDE, and that's totally fine too. But what I like with this integration is I get some auditing of the APIs that I may have my own code or I'm interfacing with through this integration with 42 Crunch, which I think is cool.
Yep. Yeah, putting these plugins in the developer's hands to be able to gain access to this as they're coding, I think is great. We've seen this with other folks. Synopsys did some stuff with IDE plugins. I'm pretty sure Veracode has some IDE plugins for the stuff that they're doing. You put it in front of developers, it makes it a lot easier to have it in their native tool. This is the lesson we're learning in AppSec. Bring the tools to the developer tools. Right. They will get used.
Yes, absolutely.
And did we mention they were free? Because they're free.
So is 42 Crunch's integration free?
It says the audit plugins are free.
Audit plugins are free. That's awesome. I will download and use it. Because not every, when you have a JetBrains product, they have a plugin library. Not all the plugins are free, right? Synopsys is paid for, but Synopsys gives you like an awesome functionality. Like we covered in a webcast, and I was super impressed at the level of functionality that they gave you inside of your IDE, and really made it streamlined for the developers. So some are paid for plugins in JetBrains, and some are free. Some have both, right? You get a free version and or a commercial version that has more enterprise features or more features in general.
Yeah, and this is one of those nice products that has a nice freemium version for individuals, for small projects. And I think the hook there is if you want to build it into DevOps workflows, you want to do some automation or get some visibility on what kind of stuff the product is getting fixed. That's where you purchase a subscription to their platform.
Sweet.
Let's see. Datadog and Snyk unveil GitHub integration to automate software development workflow. Interesting combination. You've got Datadog as kind of the monitoring company. You got Snyk as the vulnerability company, understanding those transient vulnerabilities in your dependencies, coming together to provide some capabilities. Again, automating stuff through these GitHub actions. There was a story we covered a few weeks ago about some of the potential vulnerabilities in some of these GitHub actions. So, word of caution: it's great to have some of these actions available, but there's also been some discussions about how secure some of those actions are and how they work. So folks might want to do a little more research before they implement all these fun little new GitHub action capabilities.
Yeah, it's both exciting and concerning for me, because it's exciting that we can automate a lot of these processes. We're just talking about in a webcast with Vulcan Cyber, because I want to see more of these come into operational security. I want to, as a developer, I fix a bug, I check it in to GitHub, and automatically it closes my Jira ticket for me. Maybe it tests my software, does some regression testing, maybe closes that ticket, but opens up a new one and goes, yeah, you fixed that bug, but you introduced another bug. And that automated unit testing and security testing we've got a lot of great things and a lot of people using those processes and functionality and tools in the development side. I want to see they get to the operational side so I can fix something. That could be a DNS record, that could be a patch, that could be a configuration in something. I want to see that automatically tested. We talked about this in the context of NetSparker, that when it assigns me a ticket that I've got a web application vulnerability, whether I'm a sysadmin or a developer, that it could go either way. I need to update my Apache version or I need to fix my cross-site scripting vulnerability. When I do that, when I update the ticket, NetSparker goes and scans just that one flaw and then gives me an update. I want to see this trickle into operational security as well. The concerning side is now I've got all these fancy tools that is yet more software and applications that I have to secure. Those software and applications need access. They need API keys. They might need certificates. They need all kinds of things. They are also part of my attack surface as well, which is concerning, but greatly beneficial. If we think about the old way we used to do it, email around a spreadsheet. Wow, we're light years ahead of that in so many aspects. So people are emailing spreadsheets around. It's never 100%, right? You do it for one development group or one operational group, but not the other, and you got to play catch up until you can try to cover everyone, right?
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about this a little bit on Monday with CyberSync, right? In the GRC space, managing all the risk and compliance.
Right.
Spreadsheets is the way most people still do it.
That's the primary competition. Absolutely. Excel.
Yeah.
Excel's super powerful too when you think about it.
Well, it's, I mean, that's the no-brainer test for any of these products. Can I do it faster with Excel? If so, why would I pay for your product?
Right. And one issue that I did bring up with Vulcan Cyber in that respect is one of the reasons I don't like email in spreadsheets. While the functionality might be there, the tracking is not there. I want a repeatable process that can be tracked, repeated, and also tracked. So if I fix something, if that fix falls off, I want that to be tracked inside of a software. But you have to work really hard to create software that provides that functionality, not just the tracking, to be able to accomplish all these tasks.
The last one I want to cover just quickly, because I think this was a really interesting announcement, and this is the DigiCert enabling manufacturers to embed certificates on chips prior to manufacturing, which I think is a really interesting approach to think about how do I protect not only the chips, and we've talked to Eclipsium about firmware protection and stuff, right? And we think about the supply chain, and then we take that all the way to this concept of IoT devices and how to secure them. The ability to embed and use certificates in the manufacturing process to get them on these chips, I think creates an opportunity for us to do a better job of securing aspects of the supply chain and aspects of these types of devices going forward.
Agreed. I'm not close enough to the process to know how it would work. However, if it can protect the supply chain so that someone's not building a backdoor that's inside of firmware or directly tied to the hardware or changing out my certificate or something of the like, we can protect that process. As we know, most of the manufacturing is done not in this country. Most of it's done in China. So protecting this process is super important.
Exactly right. So I thought it was an interesting announcement and an interesting approach, is because if it can help us start to protect aspects of the supply chain of our components that are in these devices, that gives us a little bit of a leg up going forward, which I think is an important piece.
Agreed. That will round out the news for this segment. Stay tuned. Martyn Crew from Gigamon is coming up next. Cybercriminals are opportunistically targeting industries that continue to operate full tilt during the coronavirus shutdowns, and their attacks have grown more sophisticated. Given this shifting landscape, taking the appropriate countermeasures becomes paramount. Mimecast Email Security 3.0 helps you evolve from a perimeter-based security strategy to one that is comprehensive and pervasive with cyber resiliency in mind. From the company that stops at nothing to block cyber threats, Mimecast is offering a fully featured 90-day web security service. Visit securityweekly.com/Mimecast to learn more. Data protection is a top priority with today's work-from-home workforce. However, current data loss prevention tools inadequately protect data in cloud or SaaS offerings from insider threats. Secure Circle automatically protects data as it leaves SaaS services such as GitHub, AWS, and Salesforce. The protection is transparent to users and works with any application to persistently protect data, even source code. Secure your data with Secure Circle's Zero Trust Data Protection. Begin your 30-day free trial by visiting securityweekly.com/Secure Circle. You want to get the right things done for your security program. Sounds simple, but what are the right things for you? What does done mean? And how are you going to get there? Rapid7 realizes more than anyone how hard this can be. While Rapid7's Insight platform offers you industry-leading vulnerability management and detection and response solutions, their focus is on understanding where you are so that they can help you get where you're going. Visit securityweekly.com/Rapid7 to get started. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. Do you always end up missing our live streams? You want to miss our live streams? Our live streams are a lot of fun. Do you need somewhere to flag Security Weekly podcast that you want to listen to? Subscribe to your favorite podcast catcher, our YouTube channel, and sign up for our mailing list. Join our Discord server and all things Security Weekly by visiting securityweekly.com/subscribe. This segment is sponsored by Gigamon. To learn more, please visit securityweekly.com/Gigamon. Joining us today from Gigamon is Director of Industry Solutions, Martyn Crew, to discuss visibility being critical in uncertain times. Martyn, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks very much. Nice to be here. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, it's nice to have you. It's interesting. We've been talking about how we'll go back to work, moving away from 2020, which a lot of people, myself included, are excited. I don't think 2021 is going to magically fix all of our problems. However, hopefully we're coming into being more normal at some point next year. But what that means for people working today is we've covered so many articles this year about who's going to work from home, how are they going to work from home. To me, it falls in three buckets. People are going to stay working from home, people that fall in the middle that may go into the office every once in a while, or maybe a shared office space and have that collaboration, and those folks that'll go back into the office because, I mean, let's be frank, if you're working from your kitchen table while all your children are doing the homeschooling, that is not the ideal scenario or situation to be working in. So now, I believe moving into 2021, we're going to have like three different challenges that we have to provide some level of visibility and security into. Martyn, your thoughts on how we're going to deal with these issues moving forward and what tools we might have to help us?
Yeah, so I think it's the right question to focus on for this session. So it's a really big issue. I think one of the things we've learned in 2020 is that most organizations weren't set up to deal with uncertainty, weren't set up to deal well with the need to respond quickly to a situation that had it had a beginning, it really didn't have a middle, and really so far hasn't had an end. So it's been, I think, very challenging for organizations to know how to plan, to know what tools they need to provide their people with. But I think, now with the vaccines coming, with models potentially from other countries that we can look at and learn from, I think we can see that, over the next few months, there is going to be the opportunity for people to go back to work. Obviously, we need to acknowledge that many people never left work. I mean, many of the people on the front lines, whether they were restaurant workers or hospital workers or whatever, they never had these choices. So for those of us in a fortunate position that we were able to work from home, and companies who could maintain their business operations in that model, we're now looking at the choices that we have. And I think what you said is exactly right. We're going to look at about a third type distribution. So there's going to be a third of folks who just want to work from home. It's been a model that's worked for them. It's something that their businesses, their organizations can deal with, and that will persist. Other people need to go back to the office. I mean, many of my coworkers and I, we talk about this all the time. with the pressures of 2 or 3 people working or studying from home, it's often very difficult to get particularly intensive work tasks completed. So going back to the office is definitely something organizations want to do. But then I think critically, there's going to be a third of the people who are going to migrate between the two. Some of the time it'll make sense for them to be based at home when they've got individual projects or work to do. Some of the time maybe they'll need to be at home for childcare reasons. But a lot of the rest of the time they'll want to be in the office to collaborate. You know, as we hit the year end, we're obviously many of us engaged in budgeting and planning and fairly intensive processes, trying to sort of figure out what 2021 looks like. And as great as many of the collaboration tools are that we've turned to in 2020, as we move into these planning meetings, a lot of this stuff is just much better done face to face. So I think the pressure to return to work is going to be there for a significant part of the working population.
Matt?
Yeah, Martin, I think the biggest challenge I have being 100% remote in planning sessions, I miss the whiteboard, right? The ability to be in a room with people and have that conversation, write it down on the board, because we're using a lot of other ways to try to recreate the whiteboard and they just don't quite work.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, so much of what we do is kind of interrupt driven. So if someone says something, other person has a thought, they want to get that thought across. And that's just really difficult to do on a Zoom meeting. And obviously, if you've got multiple people wanting to get their point across, you've got contention there. So it's just a very difficult thing to do. So I think that'll be one of the interesting things, is going to be kind of learning the social behavior when we do start going back to work.
Yeah, it's concerning for me because I feel like we're going to have this pseudo-controlled environment. I think we know in the home that users can be diligent about protecting their own home security, and there's a bunch of known elements there. We know there's IoT devices. We know the environment. Of course, when we come back to the office, we control that environment back in the office. And when we go to a hotel or travel to a conference, we typically tell our users, right, don't trust anything when you go there. But now let's say you've got groups of people, Martin and Matt, you both mentioned the whiteboard, which I think is a great point, that innovation and collaboration really needs to be in a place. What if you're meeting once a week in a shared office space and that's where you're going? Now we've got this kind of pseudo trust. I can write on this whiteboard, I can connect to the Wi-Fi, and I get a little more comfortable than I would in a hotel. And it's a very different environment from the home. How do we gain visibility into that? Do we just tell our users, look, don't trust that environment either? But that's hard because it's a place you're going to every week and you tend to develop a trust.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, it's very hard telling people not to trust something that they are comfortable and familiar with, you know, whether it's their home office or whether it's working from a permanent office, going back to a permanent office, or working in a seemingly professional and secure workspace. People just forget. They just don't realize how vulnerable they are all the time. And they also don't realize that the changing nature of the threats. It's not that this is a safe environment on Monday and therefore it's going to be a safe environment on Friday. Stuff changes. As we've all seen, there's a lot of vulnerabilities that are potentially hidden in the software stacks, the appliances and things that we all rely on. And they can change. We're all of us just an update away from being very exposed in ways that we've, I think, imagined, but have never really thought are going to happen to us. So I think part of this is the awareness that we are operating with a very large number of unknowns and encouraging people to stay aware of that. Don't take things for granted. Obviously, if you're in an office environment and you're behind a firewall, you've got one level of protection. But when you're working from home, as you said, with all the intelligent devices, which are probably proliferating now with the holiday season, you've got a whole set of other unknowns there. And certainly when you're migrating between the two, whether you're in a coffee shop or on the road, in a hotel, whatever, you do not have control of those environments. And I think to that extent, that's one of the reasons why zero trust has come so much to the fore over the last 18 months in terms of people's thinking, and really over the last 8 or 9 months in terms of us seeing it being implemented. So this is something that we spend a lot of time talking with our customers about, particularly in government for obvious reasons. Zero trust has been very much at the forefront of the agendas of most of the civilian defense and IC agencies. We've seen it very much at the forefront of people's thinking in finance as well, and increasingly in the medical area for very obvious reasons. None of us should be complacent as we move forward, regardless of the work environment we find ourselves in.
Yeah, zero trust brings up some interesting challenges, Martyn, right? And I'm curious how Gigamon kind of approaches this, because when you think about zero trust, you've got a network layer, you've got an identity layer, you might have some endpoint application layers, right? How do you stitch all that together across environments that you don't control, right? I mean, I think that's a really big challenge when it comes to zero trust in this environment that we just described. Home, work, or somewhere in between. You got to stitch all this together to make sense out of it, don't you?
Yeah, it's not zero trust, it's layered trust.
It is. Layered trust, I think, is a very good way to think about it. Yeah. So I think that's a really interesting point. I mean, all of us are accustomed to the idea of control. We believe that computer systems, computer networks, security systems, whatever, are based on the thought that they actually give us control. And I think to some degree, we have to let go of that thought. I mean, everything tells us that's not the case, that we never really have full control over things. We can mitigate, we can reduce risk, we can do all of the right things through best practices, through software, through hardware devices, whatever. But we are never truly in control of the environments that we're in. So our response really is that the thing short of control is visibility, so that you can actually know where you are at any point in time. In the case of Gigamon, you can see all of the traffic on a hybrid network. It doesn't matter where it's coming from, what source it's coming from, doesn't matter what destination it's going to, doesn't matter the protocols it's using, doesn't matter the applications that it's touching. We can give you visibility into that traffic. And from providing that visibility, we can empower your processes, we can empower your tools to give you the closest you can actually get to control. So that's really how we see this, how we see ourselves stitching all of this together. And if you look at a lot of the guidelines that have emerged around zero trust, they're now recognizing that this visibility before, during, and after the implementation of a zero trust architecture is absolutely critical.
I think that really ties into, and I don't pretend to be an expert in this area, but I've gained some visibility, pun intended, I guess, into SASE and SD-WAN and how you construct that in the cloud. I think it also speaks to kind of the resurgence of the DMZ and how we think about trust, right, in the cloud, and how based on who you are, where you're coming from, what your access method is, you gain access to certain things through a secure access service edge, so it's closer to you, but that there are trust decisions being made. I would absolutely turn to Gigamon to go, in this design, I also need visibility to enforce this trust or allow this trust and help make decisions on who should access what. Do you find customers starting to move in this direction, Martyn? And again, it's largely uncharted territory for many.
It's uncharted territory for many in one sense, and it's back to the future in another. I mean, the idea of going back to DMZ-based architectures, I think, is something that we're going to see. I think as a stopgap to try and get visibility and control, it's a good way to do it. You basically put that layer between, reality and the cyber world. And in that area, you can have control. You can take data, you can route it through specific rules, you can have different levels of authorization, whatever you need before it actually touches core systems. So I think that is something that we are likely to see. We have seen it in several of our government customers. Mm-hmm. We've not seen it yet in commercial customers that I'm aware of, but I do think that's one potential defensive architecture that does make some sense.
Yeah, I like the scenario where people that are working from home, maybe they're in a different location, and we know that this is going to be the scenario where they're like, oh, I need a computer. And this could be, you should see my dining room table when the kids are homeschooling. Like, there's laptops everywhere, and mom and dad are like, oh, wait, I need to check my email. Like, which laptop am I going to use? And when you come from an untrusted device in a lot of these architectures that speak to the, SASE and using SD-WAN and cloud technologies, when you come from that untrusted device, you've only got access to maybe the more public resources, which kind of almost reminds me of a DMZ. Like, hey, you came from this untrusted device. I don't know if I trust you enough to give you access to this resource, but not that resource. But I also need visibility to make sure that those controls are still in place, which is why I love Gigamon's solution and being able to help me monitor not just from performance and network monitoring, but also security as well.
Yeah, so I think this is a really interesting area. So one of the things is when you're actually trying to make those decisions, there's obviously a number of different ways to do them. I mean, one is to have policy engines that say, in this circumstance, do X, Y, Z. In the other circumstance, don't do it, do something different. But a lot of this stuff is so dynamic that you need to find ways to actually accommodate how you can do things on the fly. So one of the things that we do with Gigamon is we're not just looking at the network packets. We're looking at all of the data that wraps around it. We're looking at what the users are doing. We're looking at what websites they're visiting to provide context to a particular piece of information. Because it's not just enough to look at that piece of information, the data on the wire. You actually have to understand a lot more about it than is actually contained in the packet or the metadata surrounding it. So finding ways to provide that context, I think, is critical to managing this dynamic environment that I think most of us are going to find ourselves in for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, because I think there's definitely ways that we can use technology to go, well, that user authenticated, but they also access this other application that I own, and they authenticate to this other thing and are using this application. Now you can start developing a profile that can feed other systems to help them make decisions.
Yeah, I think that's right. And that's one of the key things is the feeding of other systems. I mean, there is obviously no one vendor, either a network vendor or security vendor, honestly, despite what any of them would claim, who can provide the complete security environment for the type of sophisticated enterprises that we serve. So it's going to be a patchwork of different tools from different vendors. And one of the critical things that we do at Gigamon is we sort of understand the characteristics of everything that's on the network, how it needs to ingest data, and what type of data it needs, and only send it the data that it needs and it can process. Because one of the big problems in any environment in terms of securing it is a lot of the tools are just dealing with so much data that they're overloaded. They don't know what to look at. Many of them are being fed information they actually can't look at. So getting the right information to the right tools not only makes the individual tools more efficient and lets them do their job faster, more completely, it helps secure the entire environment. So, Gigamon is kind of I don't want to say the glue, but as kind of a transport layer to make sure that everything is getting what it needs and no more than what it needs, I think is one of the keys to security as we move forward.
I used to feel like it was a lot more simple when we think about this problem, right? It was. Right? When I worked at the university, we had a large population of untrusted users. And I say untrusted because they were students. And the reason they were untrusted, because they would bring their own machines that we had no control over and actually no visibility onto the actual machine of what it was. And they would bring those on the network. We could apply a trust level and a monitoring strategy to that, because even though there was a large population of untrusted users with untrusted devices, it was still a known fact that when they were going to come on campus, that the certain level of trust that we had for them and what they needed to access, right? We knew they needed access to the internet. We knew that allowing the internet to access them didn't do anyone any favors, that was really bad. And we knew they needed access to resources on campus. And those were all points we could monitor and draw some lines in the sand, have some good visibility and control over. Now we fast forward to today. We talked about the 3 different ways people are going to work. We've got all kinds of different levels of trust, levels of trusted and untrusted users, not just the user, but the device combined together give us a level of trust. And how do we deal with that?
Yeah. So I think it's a particular problem in the education environment that you mentioned, where what devices students have got and, the patterns of behavior, the type of applications that either they need to access or that they want to access. You can put some rules in place around that. But, so many devices that people carry nowadays are not registered to the network, but are still potential points of vulnerability for the network. So that's an issue. There's another interesting thing that we see with universities, and I don't know whether you saw it in your previous role, is many of the researchers, many of the academics have really pushed back in the past on security. I mean, the ethos has been, hey, we're a sharing open culture. If you want effective research, we've got to be able to share our findings with people. And many times we've seen a lot of these folks really push back on the idea of, yeah, we understand the sharing ethos, but to be secure, for us to protect our IP, for us to protect network from, potential bad actors, many of whom are now actively targeting, many of whom have always been actively targeting universities. You have to accept these disciplines. Was that a situation that you had to deal with?
Oh, absolutely. And one of the interesting things, and I think it's a testament to Gigamon, is the researchers not only had the data security and regular security problems, but they also had this very, at the time, unique infrastructure where they were sending massive amounts of traffic. I mean, well, we need to monitor that. They're like, yeah. So we send about 30 to 40 gigs a day, and this was 20 years ago. Right? And it's like, oh. And then you had internet too, right? Which was a much, back then, I'm not sure what it looks like today. I'm sure they were always pushing the envelope to be a lot faster, to allow researchers to collaborate more quickly and transfer huge data sets, terabytes of data. They have their own internet. And how do you provide, I remember at the university all the time, Martyn, vendors would come in, oh, we've got the solution for you, and you put it in the rack, and like literally smoke would come out of it. I'm like, yeah, next. Right? And that's certainly a problem that Gigamon is able to handle, which is probably why you've got some good traction in universities doing that.
Yeah, I think so. And it's not just the volume of these huge files, it's also the nature of them. It's, these are image files and things. Often they're very complex research-based files. And often, a lot of tools cannot get the visibility into those. So having a tool like Gigamon that helps you do that is very important.
Absolutely.
One of the other areas I'm curious on is we think about stay-at-home, remote work, and 5G coming, right? And potentially connecting more of these remote locations. Does that change the way we have to think about network visibility? Can we get that same level of visibility on those connections as well, as a way to really, again, back to that stitching all this data together? What does 5G do or not do here to make things more complex for us in the future?
I'm not sure that it does actually make things more complex. I mean, we are already working with a number of the major carriers on their 5G rollouts. We've not seen any particular problems around it. I mean, for sure, you're going to be dealing with more data from more sources. So there's bound to be more vulnerabilities. There are bound to be people that are looking to exploit those as they become aware of them. But to this point, we really haven't seen anything. One of the things that we have seen is that the rollout of 5G is much harder than many organizations expected, and therefore it's been slower than many organizations maybe anticipated. But in terms of any purely technical problems, there's nothing we've seen that concerns us.
Which means I can still get all my great visibility and analytics, even though I might have a whole new way that transport layer is going to come to us.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, that's the critical thing that we're focused on. And, I don't think 5G is going to significantly change that. Really the big change that we have seen over the last year is the move to the cloud, which has been greatly accelerated. I mean, obviously, most organizations had started on that process, but now there's just no going back. I mean, for most organizations, the cloud is going to be a significant reality of their existence. I was looking at some research the other day from IDC that said they anticipate 52% of all workloads are going to be cloud-based by, I think, the end of 2021. And that certainly aligns with a lot of what we're seeing with our customers. So this is a big change in terms of security models. a lot of organizations are relying on the security from the cloud platform vendors, much of which is very good. I mean, for example, organizations like Amazon have been really deep in this and really focused on this for years and have very secure environments. But many organizations, where they're looking at doing sort of a lift and shift from an on-premises or virtualized private environment to the public cloud, they're used to working with certain sets of tools. They're used to certain patterns of behavior that they look for from their users. And they want to make sure that as they move to the cloud, they can still get that visibility. So this has been one of the big changes that we've seen. A lot of organizations historically were, the cloud's not secure. I think most people are now past that point. But a lot of people are now saying, well, we don't have the visibility that we'd like. There's too much of the cloud is a black box, whether it's the SaaS applications that they don't get visibility into to be able to monitor performance within those applications, to be able to affect that where it's necessary, or whether it's other aspects of security and visibility provided by tools that don't maybe work the way people were used to, that don't provide information the way that they wanted, or whether it's the adoption of things like container technology. I mean, obviously, one of the big benefits of moving to the cloud is to get the benefits of the agility, the scalability that go with the cloud. And so much of that is down to containerized architectures. And one of the big problems over the last few years has been that many of the containers didn't offer up the level of visibility organizations wanted. So that's one of the big focuses that we've been looking at over the last year, is getting visibility into containerized architectures, particularly Kubernetes-based architectures, and making that available. So as we turn from 2020 to 2021, that's one of the big sort of enhancements that we'll have within our product, is the ability to gain full visibility. Too many abilities there, is the fact we can get the visibility into those containers that many organizations need in order to control them within their environments.
Yeah, because the host, I mean, as we've covered, especially this year, the host layer kind of, it goes away when we start talking about containers. They're so ephemeral now that, in logging, we could have a whole other segment on the issues with logging, especially as it relates to containers and cloud native services. And many of us engineers, especially that are studying these new architectures, like, I want the network traffic, whether that's NetFlow or full path. I want the network because I don't know what's going to be deployed on it, but I need that visibility, and that's the best way, in my opinion, to get that visibility.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a mindset there that we've seen on premises for years. No matter how many times we try and talk to people about, we can provide you the metadata, either the NetFlow levels or using our application metadata intelligence products. You don't need the raw packets for everything. We can just selectively feed you the appropriate metadata. And then if you need to dive into the packets, then they're still there. We can still get you those. We, I think, maybe anticipated that would go away a little bit as we move to the cloud, but we still see it. We still see a lot of people saying, hey, the packet is the single source of truth as to what's happening on the network. I need to have access to that. So that's one of the things that we do provide.
Yeah, and you've seen the cloud providers make that packet data available with some of their packet mirroring capabilities. And I think that is a lot of pressure from organizations say, no, I still need that packet data. CloudTrail, CloudWatch is not enough.
Nope.
I want the packet. And you're seeing that adoption, which I think is good, because that gives you that visibility layer that wasn't really there before.
Yeah, absolutely right. It would be great if all those guys could come together and come up with some kind of standard for doing that. But in the absence of that, Gigamon's a great solution.
Adrian, closing thoughts, questions? Oh, Adrian, I think you're on mute. You there, Adrian? I still can't hear you. Are you on? How did you get muted? Your camera looks great, by the way. You look great. He's smiling, thumbs up. We just can't hear you. I don't know what happened. Oh wait, I heard a little. You there, Adrian?
Skype popped up and can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Skype popped up and said there was something wrong with my microphone, so I had to unplug it and plug it back in, I guess.
Oh, there you go. Reboot.
had some interesting quirks today. But yeah, talking about containers and the ephemeral nature of them, that was something that I covered cloud security back when I was at 451 Research, and that was a common question that I asked is, what happens to this dashboard that you're showing me when I create and destroy 5,000 endpoints a day or something like that, or 500 endpoints a day? Like, does it become a total hot mess, and unusable, unreadable? Like that's something that, talking about visibility here, the way that the security team, ingest this information is often through something provided by the vendor, so that's, as we get these new technologies, containers just, and the ability to create and destroy, and even VMs before that, we were doing, this create and destroy cycle somewhat, not as much as we were with containers, but it's a rethink to UX and workflow as well, and how these products interfaces are designed, and how we do reporting and alerting and all that.
Yeah, it really is. And it's something that we're thinking very hard about for a product that we're going to be coming up with later on this year that really deals with this. So as you move into these, not just high volume, but very high velocity environments where all these, as you say, ephemeral objects are being created and zapped in seconds, milliseconds, whatever. How do you actually monitor that? You can't look at everything. So what are the patterns that you're looking for? What are the behaviors that you're looking for? How do they need to be identified to people? Where does AI fit into this? Because obviously you've got way more information than a human being is going to be able to deal with, even with the best possible visibility and exception handling. So where does AI fit into that? And that's going to be a critical part of this. So I think the next year is going to be really exciting in terms of not just what we do, but how organizations adapt typical network and cloud ops functions to working in these environments.
Outstanding. Martyn, thank you so much for appearing on Enterprise Security Weekly today.
Paul, you're very welcome. Thanks very much indeed. Matt, nice to see you, and hope I can do this again sometime.
Thank you. And folks that want to learn more about Gigamon can visit securityweekly.com/Gigamon. Coming up next, a pre-recorded segment with Emily Huynh and Mandy McKenzie of Mimecast. Stay tuned. Optics has built a platform for SQL-powered security analytics. Extending the OS query agent, Optics collects, aggregates, and analyzes a wide range of system data and makes that available to solve multiple security challenges. Their solution provides visibility across Linux, macOS, Windows, containers, and cloud workloads. Their customers are using the Optics platform for fleet visibility, intrusion detection, investigation, and audit and compliance. Visit securityweekly.com/Optics and be one of the first to see how they've mapped over 500 behavioral rules to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Enterprises struggle to detect advanced attacks quickly and thoroughly as evolving threats continue to evade current security tools. Skillful threat detection starts with diverse, high-value security telemetry to run detections on. The Chronicle platform allows security teams to store and analyze petabytes of data in one place so that you can quickly apply powerful detection rules against all of your security data. Learn more about the Chronicle platform and the latest threat detection capabilities at securityweekly.com/Chronicle. Today's networks are changing fast, and employees, devices, and infrastructures are more distributed than ever. Gigamon Threat Insight is a cloud-native, high-velocity network detection and response solution that's purpose-built to enable you to get in front of this transformation. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Gigamon. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. This is the last segment of the year for Enterprise Security Weekly. You can visit securityweekly.com/webcast to register. The holiday break is also a great time to visit securityweekly.com/on-demand. This segment is sponsored by Mimecast. To learn more about the fine folks at Mimecast and all of their products and solutions, please visit securityweekly.com/Mimecast. Joining us today from Mimecast is Emily Huynh, the Global Director of Emerging Product Sales. Welcome, Emily.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Nice of you to join us today. Mandy McKenzie, the Director of Product Management Awareness Training, is also here from Mimecast. Welcome,
Lovely
Mandy.
to be here. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining us. Today, we're talking about Mimecast Awareness Training Philosophy, which is interesting. I forgot to mute my phone. I apologize if you hear it buzzing and beeping. So it's interesting. I like to start with a story, and I told the story, I think, on a webcast that we did, but it is so timely for so many reasons, where my wife had gotten a phishing attack, basically. She didn't know for sure that it was a phishing attack, and when she got the email, it was centered around getting her to click a link that takes her to a page supposedly from the Rhode Island Department of Health, that was asking her to register for a COVID-19 vaccine. Now, my wife works in healthcare, which means she's first in line for the vaccine. Coincidentally enough, to talk about this story, she actually did get the vaccine last night, which is very interesting. Many in healthcare are very excited about that. And the attackers prey on that excitement and that urgency and that need in this particular situation. Now, my wife has the advantage where she could call me and email me or come into my office and go, I think this is a phishing attack. I still really want to click the link, but I think this is a phishing attack. And, I determined pretty quickly that it was. She still almost didn't believe me until they posted on Facebook from the Department of Health going, hey, there's a phishing attack. And then for one of those rare moments in our marriage, in our time together, she was impressed with me, which was interesting. And when I was, speaking with Emily and Mandy, I was like, not everyone has me as their husband, and I'm sorry, I'm already taken in that respect. But what I want out of a security awareness and training program is it to be engaging and informative enough that I don't have to be there to help out my wife as an example with every single potential phishing attack that they get. And when Emily and Mandy were telling me about the things that you're building at Mimecast, I was super impressed and also very hopeful. So I want to turn it over to Emily and or Mandy, just for comments about how security and awareness training can help with situations like these that we're in almost every single day.
Sure. Yeah, it's a perfect example, and it's one that we hear all the time. So the way that we recommend approaching training is really to focus on engaging users or whoever's participating in the training proactively, so they have an opportunity to learn the right things to do. That way, when they're in a situation similar to your wife, they've already had the training. They can apply that to the real world situation versus, they were to click on that link, and if it was bad, then we throw them into training. If you take a proactive approach to it and focus on content that's really designed to engage users, you'll have a better result in the end if something questionable does hit someone's inbox.
And through designing a program that engages the users, you will find the culture and the behavior of the users changing, not only in the workplace, but they start applying that to their daily lives and extending that protection to their family and their kids. Think of the work from home situation with children at the moment. How do they know if an email they've received is safe or not? So our training is so engaging that the culture expands beyond the workplace.
And it sounds like your training's likely not, when I looked at the email, I was like, well, sweetie, didn't you see the domain that it came from? And I ran that domain through VirusTotal and, a bunch of my other tools and URL scan. And look, like it came back bad because there was an MD5 signature. And she's like, yeah, okay, you can stop talking now. The awareness and training should be a lot more engaging to the user than the nerdy stuff that we would do as security professionals or nerds looking at this email, right? I mean, you're engaging the user in a much different way than talking about MD5 hash signatures and such.
Sure. Yeah, the way we recommend that you train users, like Mandy had mentioned, is you want to focus on a training program that's truly engaging for your end users so that they then have that information that they can apply. So our training uses actually funny characters. We make it in sort of a sitcom style. That way people pay attention to the training, their real world situations that they themselves may have been in, or one of their colleagues might have, they've heard about it, they've seen it in their everyday life. It just makes it easier for them to retain that information when they can apply it to something they've experienced themselves.
I also think not putting the fear into people in that situation that your wife got in, the nervousness and the hesitation when you don't have the right kind of training, knowing like if you do something, what are the repercussions? And training through fear is not something that is successful. Building that, building the learning moment if something bad happens, understanding what caused it and what the repercussion is, but making that learning moment fun and engaging. And the way we do it with Safe Fish and Safe Score is that we turn that learning moment into an opportunity where the score of the company and the user is impacted, so that companies are easily able to identify who the users are that are at risk of clicking on phishing attacks, and then doing something with that information. Is it further training or is it further phishing training that the person needs? So actually taking that risk moment and being able to apply risk mitigation through it.
Sorry,
yeah,
Matt,
so it sounds,
or Adrian, go ahead.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like what you really want to do here. I think a lot of people view security awareness as, especially some of the pessimists out there, as, this goal to somehow make sure nobody ever clicks on a bad link anytime. But I like how you're talking about how, the person who's actually going through their email and trying to decide whether or not, their actual emotions and, that fear that they have that, oh God, if I press the wrong thing here, my whole company gets ransomware. So it sounds like it's a lot about giving them the confidence to be able to make the right decision there. Because I've also been in situations where you have the flip side of that, which is, if you handle it badly as an organization, they lose all confidence. And for 100% of those questionable cases, they're going to, come to you and, should I click this one? How about this one? How about this one? And once you have a dozen or 100 employees doing that on a regular basis, it's untenable.
Exactly. Yeah. And most of the attacks do come in via an email. We know that. And you want to teach people what to look out for, but you want to do that through training so they know why they don't want to make that click. Because you don't want to get to the point where people are just scared to click on anything that hits their inbox. You want them to know why, what the repercussions could be, and just understand how to make the best decision. And we take that one step further. We offer training around a variety of security topics. So we don't just focus on phishing, but other areas within an organization or even in your everyday lives that you could be targeted, that there could be serious consequences.
One of the big challenges with security awareness training has been how do you make it relevant? How do you gain an appreciation for what you're being taught? And similar to Paul's example, I get this with my wife as well. You know, she's lucky to be, I guess, married to me because I can help her with that, maybe.
For so many reasons, Matt. She's lucky
for
to be
so many
married.
reasons.
I mean,
yeah, exactly. But last night she's like, "Wait, I got this text about I signed up for this thing." I'm like, "Did you sign up for something?" She's like, "No." I'm like, "Just delete it, right?" How do you really get that appreciation across that every time it comes up, they just instinctively know that, look, if I didn't, this looks suspicious, or if I didn't sign up for something, why would I get this? I should just delete it. It's that appreciation component that I think is so hard in security awareness training.
I think with drip feeding, little modules that are not a huge time sap, they are not a huge distraction from the actual, your day-to-day work, and constantly dripping in sort of a cadence of training, reminding people of different real-life situations that can be phishing attacks, and having the two voices, the two characters that we have. There's the voice inside your head, you should or you shouldn't. And those are things that really happen. Everyone questions what they do. So the cadence of just doing one short 2-minute video once a month, and then topping it up with some fish training, just reiterating it over a period of time, definitely helps.
You also touched on something I found really interesting. You're talking about it sounded like you were talking about creating teachable moments where, if I get phishing training a week before the thing actually happens to me, or a year before it happens to me, what are the chances I'm going to remember those lessons and be able to apply them at the time? But you were talking about users, sending the simulated phishing messages, I think is what you were saying, and then sending them off to training if they handle it the wrong way, which is teaching them right in right when they need it. Right?
Yeah. So the approach that we see to be the most effective is send out the trainings. That way, whether they get a phish test or a real life phishing incident hits their inbox, they stop and they think about it. If it happens to be a test that's rolled out by the awareness training program, they will get a learning moment. So it just prompts them. We use the same characters because we want training to always be engaging, and we never want it to be something that people are dreading. Like if they make that mistake and they click on the link, they get a pop-up and it lets them know they made a mistake. It was a test, but these are the things to look out for. And then they get back to their day-to-day. We do track that, which we think is necessary in a training program. You want to know who's still making those mistakes, but it allows the administrator to then make the decision, hey, do I want to send this person another training? Or what action do you want to take on that? Because if they're only seeing their training when they're making a mistake, then it sort of has a negative connotation, and people just don't learn that way. They learn better when it's proactive. It's done in a, dare I say, fun manner with our training. And it gives people the opportunity to learn. That way they can apply it in a real world situation, or if it happens to be a test.
It's interesting. Another story that I have is, we joined acquired by the CRA, Cyber Risk Alliance, and now we're a 70 people larger company. We've got simulated phishes happening, and the Security Weekly employees, I think with both actual phishing attempts and simulated phishing attempts, have identified 100% of those. And I think that's a testament to the way you've recommended and built your training, security awareness training from Mimecast, is that it's smaller chunks, but it's very iterative and consistent. Our employees at Security Weekly are not all security professionals, right? There's production engineers, operations folks, and in different roles that don't have backgrounds in security. However, they hang out with all of us and they listen to all of the shows every single week. And they're not necessarily spending 100% of the time learning about security with us. or 100% of the time listening to our shows, they're consuming these small bits on a consistent basis. And that's been very effective. And I think that the training in the way that you deliver the training is equally as effective because it mirrors kind of our model that we just grew organically because, that's what we do. That's obviously not every organization. I think you can mirror that with the model and the programs and products you're talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's real world examples. That's how people learn best, when they can apply it to themselves. It's a familiar situation, and that's how they'll remember it as well.
I think also a little bit of gamification, being able to see how they're doing on the questions against their colleagues. Not that it's a competition, but that's interesting stuff. And also compared to other industries, how does their department compare to other departments? How does their industry compare to others? Having that kind of analytics as well also makes for interesting, feedback.
We also have 2 new characters for you. We can model Paul and Sam in your awareness trainings.
We're always looking to expand our cast, so we'll sign you up for an interview.
It would be hilarious. Sam handles a lot of our financials, and so she's like super paranoid, and things happen. She's like, "Oh my God, I opened that email or I clicked that link, and I don't know if it was phishing or not." Because we have those conversations all the time. I'm like, "It's okay. Everyone clicks on a phishing link at least once in their lives, probably more, right?" And I think it's just that constant learning, and where it's interesting where I think our employees have gotten to from hanging out with all of us, and where I think security awareness training leads people to is kind of that ultimate point where the users realize that people will lie to them. And I think as human beings, we like to be very helpful. We like to be initially very trusting of people, and attackers, of course, prey upon that. And where I think the best users are in terms of spotting phishing attacks is they go in with verify first, then trust, and with the notion that attackers are going to lie to me. And I have to think that almost every email I get is a lie. Yeah. Is that kind of in line with some of the training?
Yeah, and it's also just it's just indicative of the times that we're in. Like, it's quite sad that people are being targeted through their emotions, like donating to causes and pulling on the heartstrings related to the COVID pandemic that we're in. It's very sad that users have to be even more aware, but also working from home. You've got so many moving parts just with that in terms of internet providers and kids and husbands and sharing devices. So it's quite clear why people are being targeted more. I think we are easier victims now.
For sure.
Yeah, I can certainly attest from that, working from home with children and having them all homeschool, and everyone's got different computers and laptops, and you're just like, oh, I need to check my email from this one. Oh, that looks kind of suspicious, but I can't validate that unless I'm on my computer, and it is a very distracting.
And the juggling and the stress that people are under emotionally, but also working longer hours. There's so many factors that are contributing to people being more vulnerable at the moment.
Adrian?
Yeah, something you mentioned that I really resonated with me also, was, learning things that you can use at home as well, and maybe the family can use as well. Because even long before the pandemic, I was working with a lot of endpoint companies as an industry analyst for a number of years. And one of the things I was trying to convince them is that, you can't just focus on the enterprise, because even back then we had a lot of people working from home. Even people who worked from offices, they didn't stop work after they drove home. They'd have laptops at home and mobile devices that would connect to work email and other portions of systems at work. And just the idea that you can protect a company just by protecting your employees when they're at work, I just don't think works anymore. And now with the pandemic, that line is even more blurred, where obviously the attackers are aware that people are working from home. So what's to prevent them from targeting folks there as well? So really, I think, we do need a more holistic approach in general in security, and train people to be secure, period, not just secure when they're at work.
Yeah, I think that's a really great way of putting it. We want, and a lot of the things cross over. Things that you learn in the office setting apply to your life. A lot of us communicate with each other now over technology, primarily, whether it's email or social media, and just being aware of that, not only in the office, but also when you're at home, because something can go just as wrong there. And then being able to teach the people that maybe aren't getting the professionally made training, but if you can apply that to everyday life and help your family learn the same, then that's the right path to go down now for sure.
One of the great examples with one of our videos is, the manager posts that he's going to Cabo on holiday on his Facebook page, and a hacker is able to, send a phishing attack to his organization, knowing his status and where he's going to be for a period of time. So it's things that you don't even think of. You update your status. You've got so many different areas that people are watching you, and they can use that information to then target you in a workplace.
You shared with me one of the videos. It's on your YouTube channel, and I'll make sure we get a link to that. Because we watched some of it, and it really did kind of feel more like a Saturday Night Live skit, that I was both being entertained as well as learning stuff through the process. And I think that that's super important, because I want to go back to, my wife working in healthcare in a very diverse working environment, even so that some of the folks she works with, English is a second language, and they have a really tough time going through their security awareness training that they have today, because there's a language barrier. And often people will ask my wife, because they're like, wait, your husband does security, so that means you must know some stuff through osmosis, right? And they're like, can you help me, get through this training? And that it's not fair to give them the answer, but it's also not fair to make them go through training that isn't engaging enough, especially for those where English is a second language. That's why I like the more entertaining aspect, because I think it appeals to a wider and more diverse group of people, which is super important. As we know, as attackers, we really just need to phish one user.
Right. Yeah.
We do, our videos
ahead,
all
Mandy.
are in 26 languages. So,
Nice.
End users with their choice, they are able to actually switch out and watch the same localized version of the humor in the language of their choice, which is great.
That's important, because humor doesn't always necessarily translate between languages as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. And seeing the same characters helps build that engagement and continuity with the security messaging over time as well. And people sort of get to know who's going to make the mistake, what role everyone plays within the training content. And that just helps build that engagement and changing the culture within an organization around security.
How are the videos delivered? Is it a separate login and system? Is it integrated into the rest of the Mimecast offerings? How integrated is it, and what do people need to do to get started?
So awareness training can be bought as a standalone product. We do run it off our Mimecast operating system, but the power of the platform and the power of the integration of awareness training along with the other tools is where you start to see the value, the real value. So we're not just a standalone phishing tool. We're not just a standalone training video content machine. There's actually a lot of integration, and our most recent innovation of SafePhish does exactly that, where emails at the gateway are rewritten through our gateway mail scanning system, but we are actually using that to identify if somebody does fall victim to a real phishing attack. That attack is then impacting the safe score on the AT front end. And we're able to actually use the analytics for CISOs and security professionals to identify who their risky users are. So it is on the Mimecast platform, and that is where we see the most value integrating across the suite.
That's great.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because it is very difficult to create realistic phishing attacks. And that degree of difficulty varies depending on how much skill and experience you have doing it. I mean, someone that's been doing pen testing for 20 years, it comes more natural to create a phishing attack. But if you don't have that background, you need help creating those realistic phishing attacks, and taking a real one and somewhat, I guess I could say defanging it, right? And using that in your phishing program I know as part of the platform from Mimecast, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. When I looked at the fish that was received by my wife, I was like, it's actually a really good phishing attack. In terms of the messaging and intent, some of the technical measures they didn't get right, which is how I was able to differentiate it. But the premise of it, I thought was very good and could be used for future training, especially in that environment, because someone tailored it to that environment. So why not take that and integrate it into your phishing protection strategy?
Exactly, and that's the beauty of it. Not only was it a good phishing template, but she actually clicked on it, or in this case she didn't. But if you actually click on it, that's where we're saying that's a good one, because somebody actually fell victim to it. There's thousands of templates out there, and it's an admin burden trying to identify what is the right template to send to my organization. And with this one, it's kind of the job is done for you.
Mm-hmm. Matt, Adrian, further questions?
Yeah, I think choosing the template's pretty important. We've seen some negative examples, maybe in the news in the past couple of months, of templates you might not want to choose, situations where you might not want to, but you definitely need to be aware of the context with your business. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of phishing around COVID, around current events. I think one of the triggers we often see are catastrophes, disasters, when there's earthquakes or, floods and things like that. The bad guys will capitalize on that. But to some extent, you have to have some empathy as well with your employees and feel out where those boundaries should be.
Exactly. I think also giving the organization, giving them the flexibility to be able to customize templates is important as well. We found with our customer base, some of them don't like to phish, to trick their users on behalf of another company, even though there's a legal disclaimer saying it was a test. So some companies are very restricted in what they can test, and they've got to strip attacks down to the bare minimum to be able to send it out. But capturing that risk and mitigating it through the real attack is actually just it's key.
Mm-hmm. Emily, I'm curious. Sorry,
go ahead, Matt.
Adrian. I was going to ask Emily one question, because I know as you're out talking to your customers, where do they see the evolution of this capability going? Are they happy with where it is now, or do they see what are some of the enhancements that we can think about in this space to make it even more relevant and more like directed to the individual so that they appreciate it more? Are you seeing some interesting trends or requests out there?
Yeah, that's definitely safe fish. So Mandy touched on it, but the ability to take a phishing attempt that came into your organization, that it wasn't blatant spam or anything like that, but it was a fish. It got through and somebody clicked on it. So we know somebody fell for it. Using that as a template to then test other users within the organization, because it takes the guesswork out of that portion of your training. And that way, when you're sending out your training modules, you know that the tests you're sending as a follow-up to those, it was designed specifically to get to somebody within your organization, taking that guesswork out of it. Because like Mandy said, not everyone wants to use Amazon as an example. Even though everyone's getting those emails, people could have been trained on that, but somebody already fell for a specific one that came into the organization. So we're definitely seeing that. And we're also seeing people are way more open to the humor aspect that we take with our training, because people don't need anything more negative right now. So if they have the ability to have a little humor in their day, that training is just better received. So we're definitely seeing that pick up as well.
Well, if you need any dad jokes, I got lots of dad jokes that
always.
my family
so
doesn't
many dad
find
jokes.
Funny. My family doesn't find it funny. Some people do.
It's kind of like scotch. First time you have it, it burns. But you learn an appreciation for it.
Just keep drinking it; it'll get better.
But yeah, that didn't fully click with me before. That safe fish, you're actually taking actual catching them from the wild. I guess if we take this analogy, fully on it, the difference between, your farmed fish and your fish caught in the wild, and then using that as your content for training employees, which I think is fantastic. Just naturally, me, when I've been in a role where I was delivering security awareness to the organizations that I worked with, I always used the attacks that I saw personally that came into my account. And generally, it wouldn't be anything nearly as effective as what you're doing, but I would take a screenshot of that and send out an email, and say, hey, here's a real phishing attack that I saw. Here's how I was able to tell it was a phishing attack. Of course, I'm doing all that in text and stuff like that. But I don't think you can do any better than that. We actually got this fish. Somebody actually fell for it, and here's how not to fall for it. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, you just take that. We give you the ability to easily turn it into a template, and then you just select the user group that you'd like to roll that out to. And then we provide reporting back on that test. So you can see who fell for it. Did they click? Did they just open the email? What action did they take? And then as the administrator, what's the best follow-up there for those users that made a mistake?
And with taking the templates that users actually clicked on in the beginning and curating from that, rather than just every single email that hits an organization that is categorized as phishing, sticking that in a library. Can you imagine how big that library would get? This is, this is just making it lighter, leaner, simpler. This hit your organization, somebody clicked on it, therefore something is good about this template. And here is an option for you to use it.
That's how you weed out your bad templates, Adrian.
Yeah, and anything you do to reduce the number of decisions somebody in the security department has to make is a win for them.
I think that's also what we've heard from customers is that yes, it would be wonderful to have thousands of templates to choose from, but that is overwhelming in itself.
Yeah, please just choose for me.
Yeah, basically.
Right? Focus on ones that work. Use them as good test cases to train everybody else. Why not?
Yep.
The question that I would have, though, is if you could measure, if you sent out a simulated fish and it had a high degree of users reporting it, is that because it was a bad fish, or is that because you've done a great job training your users?
Could be both. And the good thing is, it's good to have both of those functionalities. And that's one of the things
that would be a great problem to have.
Right? That's what we're striving for.
That's what you're trying to build. You're trying to build a culture of behavioral change where your end users become the allies to the security team. You're wanting them to be there on defense, waiting for the next attack and spreading the word when one happens. That's what you're wanting to build. And that's what we find does happen.
Well, Mandy and Emily, thank you so much for your time today. It was an awesome discussion. We had lots of fun talking about phishing and ways to train your users effectively.
This was great. Thank you so much, guys.
Great to meet you both. Thank you.
Thank you. And you can visit securityweekly.com/Mimecast to learn more about all the products and solutions we talked about today. And that will conclude this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly and round out ESW for 2020, last ESW for this year. So we'll see you in 2021 from this show. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. See you next time.